This is Matthew Cratter from Trader University, and today I want to talk about something very sinister that's going on with Ethereum, and I want to talk about whether this is going to be the end of Ethereum or the capture of Ethereum. If you've been watching this channel, you already know what a giant mess Ethereum is. You had this huge pre-mine, 65-70%, where all these insiders got free coins or coins at a very low price. And the upcoming move to proof of stake, the new consensus mechanism, is basically going to help these huge beneficiaries of the pre-mine to solidify their control. You have these almost like oligarchs, Vitalik and Joe Lubin, who have this outsized control over the protocol. And then we've also done some videos about how JP Morgan has been heavily involved in Ethereum since the beginning. These are all very bad things, especially if you're interested in the freedom, the promise of freedom from crypto. So Ethereum, as we said, is moving from proof of work to proof of stake. Maybe in 2022, this is something that's been delayed for years. Earlier in 2022, people believed it would happen this year. Then a dev came out from Ethereum and said it's probably going to take a little bit longer. Under proof of stake, instead of having miners like you have under proof of work with Bitcoin and currently Ethereum under proof of work, under proof of stake you have what are called validators, and validators validate the transactions. It's basically the equivalent of mining under proof of stake. Now, to become a validator under Ethereum, the new Ethereum 2.0, you're going to need to have 32 ETH. I left this blank here. It's roughly, call it $60,000 today. So it's not a small chunk of change, especially if you want everyone to be able to be involved in Ethereum. Right now, there are two blockchains. There's the original Ethereum blockchain, the mainnet, which is running on proof of work. And then you have the beacon chain or Ethereum 2.0 chain, which is currently working on proof of stake. And then at some point, there's going to be this merge, and everything's going to go over to Ethereum 2.0. And we're going to see some reasons why everything does have to move over there and why people will be strongly incented to move as well. As we've been saying for many months, proof of stake is already a terrible consensus mechanism. It's much less neutral. It's much less easy to game. It's much more easy to game than proof of work. Under proof of stake, it's basically ruled by the rich, and the rich get richer. It's very similar to the current fiat financial system. And so all these people who want us to move to proof of stake really want us to be moving backwards, back to the captured system, because proof of stake systems are very easy to capture, as we're going to see. Proof of stake does use less energy than proof of work, but storing your money in a wet paper bag uses even less energy than proof of stake. There is something in the real world where people who don't believe in unicorns and rainbows understand that requires energy, and that security is not a free thing. You can't just magically create it. Under proof of stake, there's another problem. There's no way to tell which of two blockchains is the real one without a central authority like Vitalik picking one. Especially if you have a network partition, it's not self-healing in the same way that proof of work is. And I made a video about this, which I'll link to below if you want to learn about how network partitions work. And this is a really big risk for proof of stake. And while you're here, if I could ask you to also hit that subscribe and like button, that would really help out the channel. But wait, there is more. If you stake, so let's talk about proof of stake in Ethereum. If you stake your ETH and become a validator, you earn rewards, you earn more ETH. And these can be translated into some annual percentage yield. Currently, it moves around, so it is a variable return, but something like 3 to 10%. Right now, it's probably around 4%. But for the sake of the math here, let's just assume that it's a 5% annual yield. So this is a little bit like having a CD where you make 5% a year, but it's not a fixed rate here. It's going to move around. So let's say we have two people, two Ethereans. We have Sally and we have Harry. Sally stakes her $100 worth of ETH and makes 5% in the first year. Let's assume that it's not a variable reward, but it stays fairly constant at 5%. Harry believes in self-custody. He doesn't want to give his Ethereum to someone else in order to stake for him, and so he doesn't stake his $100 worth of ETH and make 0%. Now, the reason these two would have to give up self-custody in order to do staking is because you need 32 ETH to stake, which, as we said, is about $60,000 today, maybe $59,000 today. And each of these two people only have $100 worth of ETH. So Sally stakes her $100. Harry Sally stakes her ETH. Harry does not stake his ETH under the new system. Now let's assume that the ETH fiat price stays the same. Of course, if it goes up or goes down, each of them will be losing or making money, but let's just assume it stays the same. After 1 year, Sally will then have $105 worth of ETH, and after 1 year, Harry will still just have $100 worth of ETH because he's not earning any interest. He's not staking his ETH. So what's happening here is Harry is actually getting massively diluted. He's getting destroyed by ETH inflation since he has chosen not to stake and not to participate in these rewards. And this just gets worse and worse over time. You can imagine if the APY is 10%, how rapidly it happens. But even under 5%, after 2 years, Sally has a little more than $110 worth of ETH, and Harry still has $100. So he is being hurt by the people who are staking, and they're getting the new coins. He's not getting the new coins, so he's basically losing purchasing power in ETH terms. He's being diluted. So knowing this, we can conclude that every single rational actor will stake their ETH. Otherwise, they're guaranteed to get poorer relative to those who stake their ETH. If you don't stake, you get killed by ETH inflation, as we've seen in this simplified example. But as we've also said, not everyone can afford to purchase 32 ETH or 50, 58, 59, $60,000 worth of ETH, which is what's needed to become a validator. So what do you do if you have less than 32 ETH and you want to stake under Ethereum 2.0? Well, you can stake your ETH through Coinbase or another exchange. Brian Armstrong is very happy to hold your ETH for you. All these exchanges love to gobble up your coins and have you hold them there. Currently, it looks like Coinbase is allowing about a 3.68% yield on Ethereum. That's roughly what you get. It moves around, and of course, Coinbase is taking a fee on this, which they enjoy. So this is one thing to notice as well, that under proof of stake, these crypto exchanges, and we've talked about this before, these crypto exchanges will have enormous power since they'll be holding and staking a lot of ETH in the name of their customers. And this gives them voting power too. This gives them power over the protocol. When a lot of people use Coinbase to stake their ETH, this is basically saying, Brian Armstrong, Coinbase, I want you to think for me. I want you to vote for me. I want you to have custody of my coins. And if you're a Bitcoiner, if you understand the crypto promise, the original Satoshi's original promise, it's all about controlling your own coins and self-custody and a bearer asset, etc. So this is the complete opposite of that. When you stake your ETH through Coinbase, as we said, you give up custody, not your keys, not your coins. They could get lost, they could get stolen. There's probably not enough insurance coverage to make everyone whole in a big hack. I've gone through that exercise before on this channel. You can look up some of the videos where I look up the insurance coverage, and maybe they have $1 billion worth of insurance coverage and they have $5 billion worth of coins, which means that everyone would just get back 20 cents on the dollar in a big hack. So these things, they're not covered by government insurance, obviously. It's crypto. They're not covered by FDIC insurance. Unless you have 32 ETH, though, you're going to be forced to give up self-custody because you're going to have to allow someone else to pool your ETH with other people's, get it up to 32 ETH, and then be able to become a validator. So if you have less than 32 ETH and you want to stake on Ethereum 2.0, you can give your coins to Coinbase or Kraken or Gemini or one of these exchanges. You could also use what are called liquidity staking pools or staking pools like Lido. So here's Lido. It's basically a way of everyone pooling their ETH together, and then it's staked, and Lido runs these validators or outsources the running of their validators. In the Lido staking pool, there's currently about 4.2 million ETH, and the stakers are earning about a 4% APR, so slightly higher than what we saw with Coinbase. That this is a huge percentage. If we look down here, we can see that Lido, about 4 million. This says 4 million ETH. Let me see, is that what this? Yeah, so it's roughly the numbers match up. But the total ETH deposited on the Beacon chain in ETH 2.0 is about 13 million. So it's roughly 33%. Lido is very far ahead of all the other stakers, ahead of Kraken, ahead of all these other names that we can see here. So what's happening here is you're seeing massive centralization in Lido. It's very good for the investors in Lido, but it's very bad for if you're worried about centralization. And again, this is proof of stake. The more coins you have, the more power you have over the protocol. It's not like Bitcoin. Here's Vitalik. Even Vitalik is worried about this. And he just did this tweet a couple weeks ago. Speculative, controversial take. We should legitimize price gouging. I think he means we should not legitimize price gouging by top stake pool providers. If a stake pool controls more than 15%, it should be accepted. Oh, I guess I understand what he's saying here. He wants basically the stake pools to raise the fees so fewer people stake with them, and it becomes less centralized. So this is what we see. This is the problem with proof of stake. You're going to get more and more centralization, whether it's centralized in large staking pools like Lido. There's another one called Rocket Pool. There are a few of these. And then you have the exchanges. And so where you're going to end up under proof of stake is you're going to have a few very large players. You're going to have Gemini and Coinbase and Lido and Rocket Pool and Binance, etc., FTX. You're going to have these large exchanges and large staking pools, and they will have control over the protocol. Now, someone might argue, isn't this a good thing because anyone can buy the Lido governance tokens and have some say over the DAO. So Lido is run by a DAO, a decentralized autonomous organization, rather than a corporation. And you have these governance tokens, and you can vote on the Lido protocol. The thing is, when you look at the initial Lido token allocation, so this is the governance token that's used for voting, founding members of the Lido DAO were given 64% of the Lido token. So they have much more than a majority. And as such, basically, you're at the mercy of these founders and these insiders. You have no real governance control. And so you can stake your ETH with them. You can earn a yield, which is great. I mean, 4% looks pretty good in this still fairly low interest rate environment. Of course, inflation is somewhere between 8 and 25%, at least in the US. And so you're falling behind. There's this massive centralization risk. You've given up custody of your coins to either Coinbase or Lido, an exchange or a staking pool. This is the problem. But at this point, I can hear the objections already. But Bitcoin is controlled by the whales and Bitcoin miners, and you need to be rich to be either. This is just not true. Proof of work is very special. It's very neutral. Under proof of work, unlike proof of stake, which Ethereum's moving to, under proof of work, owning more Bitcoin does not give you any more extra control over the network. If Bitcoin were proof of stake, it would. But under proof of work, owning more Bitcoin does not give you extra control. Now you can see why regulators and scammers like Chris Larson from Ripple, they all want Bitcoin to move to proof of stake under the guise of becoming more green and environmental. But what they really want is they want to be able to have that control over the protocol. Now, what about Bitcoin? So Bitcoin miners have no control over the protocol. They just mine. They basically work for the full nodes. What about Bitcoin whales? Well, Bitcoin whales can dump Bitcoin. They can buy Bitcoin to move around the price. When you sell a lot of Bitcoin, it moves down the price. When you buy a lot of Bitcoin, it moves the price back up. This is not necessarily a way to get rich because you end up having a lot of slippage in your trade. So I don't think it's quite as easy as people think to manipulate Bitcoin like this and profit from it. But there's certainly probably some Bitcoin whales who do this, and they try to run people's stops. They try to sell their Bitcoin and then trigger stops to everyone, stop losses to kick in, and then they can use that to get more liquidity to buy back in. But this is what happens. When they dump their Bitcoin, it allows you and me to accumulate more Bitcoin at a lower price. Bitcoin crashes are good for this reason. If you still have money left to buy Bitcoin, and if you're taking this long-term view that you want Bitcoin's price to stay as low for as long as possible, so you can use your monthly earnings to buy more of it. When whales dump Bitcoin, it makes Bitcoin cheap for the rest of us. When they buy Bitcoin, it drives up the fiat price, and no one has to argue that this makes people happy. So I don't see the problem with whales. I don't see why people are so scared of whales. There are whales in stocks. There's whales in the bond market, and futures market, and commodities, etc. If you're not a short-term trader, if you're not using leverage, it really doesn't matter what the whales do, and you should welcome whenever they dump so you can get more Bitcoin at a lower price. These whales have no voting control over the protocol. Under a proof of stake system, they would. If we transition Bitcoin from proof of work to proof of stake, then these whales would actually have real power in terms of their validation. They also have, while they can manipulate the price short term, they might get hurt doing it as well. There's no guarantee in these things that they always make money doing it, but they can make the price of Bitcoin presumably wiggle in the short term. They have zero control over the long-term price or long-term value of Bitcoin. This is set by the market. This is set by long-term and medium and short-term players. So whales can wiggle the price in the short term, but not in the long term. Bitcoin miners have no power to change the protocol. Bitcoin whales have no power to change the protocol. And Bitcoin miners take their marching orders really from the Bitcoin nodes and the wider Bitcoin ecosystem. I'll link to this video so you can learn more about that if you're not aware of that. So Ethereum is a very, very different animal. And if you think you have to diversify, there's something called diversification, kind of a pun on diversification. If you diversify out of something that's very good and very sound and very special and precious like Bitcoin, if you try to diversify and you diversify into cat turds, this is diversification, but you've worsened your portfolio. And basically, Ethereum, if you sell some of your Bitcoin to buy Ethereum, I think you've made your whole risk reward outcome and view much, much worse. Ethereum has been controlled by beneficiaries of the huge pre-mine since inception. Vitalik, Joe Lubin have these bully pulpits and can lead Ethereum in whatever direction they or their government or banker handlers would like them to move it. And this move to proof of stake, as we've seen in this video, is only going to increase centralization as ETH pools and accumulates at just a few large exchanges and large staking pools like Lido. In this way, Ethereum is on its way to becoming a fully captured coin. And this is a general principle, at least in the 2020s. When anyone asks you to be more green or more environmental, you can be certain that they're asking you to consent to new handcuffs that they control, especially if they're a regulator or government official. These people do not care about you and me. They also don't care about the environment. They just care about control. And it's always couched in these terms: green for you, but not for me. And this is the push for proof of stake from proof of the movement. Regulators and politicians want us to move Bitcoin from proof of work to proof of stake so that they can presumably, ostensibly to make it more green, but it's really so that they can have control over the protocol. And this is how they always are: green for you, but not for me. I'm going to keep flying my private jet to Davos. Meanwhile, I want you to walk or bike to work. Another way to reduce our carbon footprint, of course, would be to stop bombing third world countries every few years. This is the fiat standard, which is basically a proof of stake system. If the new world asset, the new world global currency is Ethereum, you can have a similar situation where you're going to have corrupt insiders, as we have with fiat currencies, controlling it under a proof of stake system. If you found this video helpful, be sure to hit that subscribe and like button. Hit the notification bell if you want to be notified when I publish my next video. And let me know your questions and comments in the comment section below. Thanks all for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.